99% of people who saw it then and see it now believe it's a prayer, a curse, a sigil of some forgotten demon. They are wrong. The truth is infinitely more devastating. Your mind races, your fingers tracing the shape in the air. The circle is not eternity, not God, not a magic ward. It's a container, a bucket, a cistern, a clay pot. So simple, so obvious it hurts. The three wavy lines flowing into it, they are not the Holy Trinity or the rivers of the underworld. They are water, but you stay here, in the dirt, with the bones of the healthy dead, and you feel a different truth settle in your gut, a truth that is pulled and sharp as a blade. The record says they were heretics, but the earth says they were innovators. The record says they were sinners, but their bones say they were well-fed, long-lived, and brilliant. The heresy wasn't in who they worshipped. The heresy was in the fact that they didn't need to pray for a miracle to survive the winter. Their existence was a living, breathing accusation against the entire system. The sin isn't that you love her. The sin is that you haven't paid for it this month. You stand in the cold sacristy, the air thick with the ghosts of incense and snuffed beeswax. The bishop's man, Brother Thomas, doesn't look at you. His eyes are fixed on the heavy oak table between you, his face a mask of pious indifference. He is here for the collegium, the concubine tax, a word that is never spoken in the light, a secret written only in the ledgers of power. There is only the soft, wet thump of the small bundle being placed in the mud. This is the Great Famine, and 99% of people, for 700 years, have believed it was a tragedy of bad weather. They don't know it was a meticulously engineered transfer of wealth, a cull disguised as a crisis. They don't know about the ledgers. Imagine a book, its pages brittle as dead leaves. In it, a clerk's steady hand has recorded the truth in neat, emotionless columns. Shipment, grain. Destination, Flanders. Quantity, 500 tons. Price, 800% markup. This is the art the church calls heresy. This is tampering with God's temple, an act of supreme arrogance. The priest says a man's suffering is God's will, a test of faith. To interfere is to spit in the face of the divine. But here is the secret they will bury for 700 years, the truth that 99% of people will never learn. You are not witnessing butchery. You are witnessing a miracle. The common belief is that this is a death sentence, a desperate, foolish act. The beans pull life from the air and feed it back into the soil for the corn. The broad squash leaves trap the moisture, shielding the ground from the brutal summer sun and choking out the weeds. A recently deciphered manuscript from a Benedictine monastery calls these techniques the devil's harvest. But the only magic here is knowledge. This trinity produces yields 70% higher than the Lord's fields. 70% more life, 70% more freedom. The last piece of the puzzle falls into place. It makes no sound, yet the silence it leaves behind is deafening, a vacuum where 1,000 years of lies used to be. You are staring at nothing, a scrap of parchment, the memory of a carving, the ghost of a mark on human skin. But you are seeing everything for the first time. The symbol, the one that has haunted your steps, from the filth of the peasant's hovel to the hallowed halls of the cathedral. John's wort fills the air, the very same medicinal plants the church had forbidden, branding them as witchcraft. They weren't just living longer, they were healing themselves. They were masters of a knowledge the world was trying to forget. They had built a pocket of radical wellness, a sanctuary of life in the heart of the Dark Ages. This is where the story splits. 99% of historians who even know of Auvillers dismiss it as an anomaly. They read the church record, cleansed for heresy, and they move on. And you realize, with the metallic taste of fear in your mouth, that they didn't just hide knowledge here. They hid a plan. The symbol isn't a diagram, it's a key. And it unlocks something far more dangerous than a banned book. Smoke, thick and rich with the smell of roasting meat, curls from its kitchen chimney. The scent drifts down on the damp air, a form of torture more exquisite than any dungeon rack. It mixes with the other smells of your village, the stench of sickness, of human waste, and the sweet, cloying odor of the shallow graves that pockmark the edge of the woods. You watch your neighbor, a man whose name was once John, carry the tiny, blanket-wrapped body of his daughter. There is no priest to say the words. He died last month. It's the sound of Elric's trephine, a simple tool with a wicked point and a cross handle, as he slowly, deliberately, drills a hole into the living bone of the merchant's skull. Scrape, turn, grate. With every rotation, a fine dust of bone, pink with blood, sprinkles onto the dark hair below. The man on the table groans, a deep, guttural sound from a place beyond pain. You can smell his fear, a rank, sweaty odor that mixes with the wine on Elric's breath, which he uses not for courage, but to cleanse his tools. A trinity the church has declared unnatural, an affront to the divine order of planting one crop in its season, of letting the land lie fallow as God commanded. But 99% of people, then and now, don't understand the truth. The fallow system wasn't about God. It was about control. It was designed to produce just enough to feed the Lord, to pay the tithe, and to keep you perpetually on the edge of starvation. Your forbidden garden, however, is an act of rebellion. The distant, unmistakable click of a modern magnetic lock disengaging in the corridor outside. Heavy, measured footsteps are coming your way. They know what you found. The secret is out of the parchment, and now the system designed to obscure it is coming to obscure you. In an age where most people drank from rivers filled with human waste and animal filth, where dysentery was a death sentence scrawled on the bottom of every cup, these people drank pure water. You can almost hear it, a ghost sound from 800 years ago. The clear, clean music of water flowing through clay, a sound of life in an age of death. This wasn't a primitive hovel, it was a marvel. Then you find the graves. Tucked beside the skeletons are clusters of dried herbs. Your fingers crumble a leaf and the faint scent of thyme and Saint Bon. Your fingers are still tracing the symbol on the pillar. The cold of the stone seems to seep into your bones, carrying with it a chilling revelation. This symbol, repeated from the lowest hovel to this grand cathedral, is more than just a piece of hidden science or a quiet protest. It's a link in a chain. It connects the peasant to the engineer, the magician to the mason. It's the signature of a conspiracy that runs deeper than you ever imagined. You listen to the quiet, rasping scrape of your own fingernail against the inside of an empty wooden bowl, a sound that has replaced prayer. Your stomach is a hollow cavern, a knot of pain so constant it feels like a part of you now, like another limb. Weeks ago, you boiled the leather from your shoes. Last week, you ate roots and bark stripped from the skeletal trees. Now, there is only the rain and the gnawing emptiness. From the hill, you can see the Lord's castle. He thrashes, and you press down harder, the rough wool of his tunic scratching your forearms. The only light is a single tallow candle, its flame dancing wildly, casting your shadows onto the damp stone like frantic, demonic giants. Master Elric, the surgeon, leans over the merchant's head. He doesn't pray. His only prayer is the concentration etched into the deep lines of his face. Then you hear it, the sound that will haunt your sleep for a month, a grating, rhythmic scrape. The sister of Bean, with arms unwound, climbs her sister from the sacred ground. Your son, barely 7, places a dried bean at the base of the imaginary stalk. He knows his part. He has to. The sister of squash, with leaves so wide, keeps the thirsty sun from the soil inside. Your fingernails scrape against the wet earth, a sound like scratching the secret onto forbidden parchment. You are planting them together, corn, beans, and squash. You can almost hear the soft, wet sound of rotting thatch dripping in a peasant's hovel, a sound that this letter ensured would continue for generations. You have just uncovered the greatest crime in history, a secret kept not by assassins, but by librarians. The digitization is complete. The file is saved. The poison of this truth is now loose in the modern world, contained on a small hard drive in your hand. And that's when you hear it. A sound that doesn't belong in the dead quiet of the archive. You see the skeletons of the old, men and women who lived far past the brutal average of 35. They didn't just survive here, they thrived. They were healthy, and that's the first secret, the one that makes the hair on your arms stand up. You uncover the village's nervous system, an intricate web of irrigation channels, engineered with a startling precision that fed terraced fields bursting with life. You trace the terracotta pipes, a closed-loop system that brought clean, fresh water directly into their homes. Imagine it. They aren't just decorations to ward off demons. They are coded warnings. That one, with the bloated face and greedy eyes, it's a perfect caricature of the bishop who demanded a tax that starved a dozen villages. Another, with its wings unfurled, isn't a beast of legend. Its bone structure is a hidden diagram for a flying machine, a concept that would get you burned at the stake. This isn't just a house of God. It's a library for the resistance, a university of the forbidden. Every arch, every window, every carving is a page in a book they couldn't burn. History calls it an act of God, a whim of a bitter changing climate. But the forgotten shipping ledgers, hidden in the salt-dusted archives of Genoa, tell a story written in the ink of human greed. You are huddled in a hut that is more mud than wood. The rain has not stopped for 2 years. It is 1316, and the world has become a cold, gray soup. The thatch roof above you is a rotting sponge, and a steady, rhythmic drip lands on the dirt floor, a sound that has become the metronome of your hunger. They tell you the most dangerous man in your city is the hangman. They are wrong. The most dangerous man is the one reeking of wine and iron, the one whose hands can steal a soul back from God's grasp. You are in a cellar. The air is thick with the metallic tang of blood and the sour ghost of spilled wine. Your knuckles are white, your fingers digging into the shoulders of the man on the table. He is a merchant, a man of some means, but the pressure in his skull has turned him into a whimpering animal. This is a classroom without walls, a church without a cross. The moon is your only witness. You pull them close, the smell of wood smoke and damp earth clinging to them, and you speak the rhyme. Not a child's tune for skipping, but a coded blueprint for survival. The Sister of Corn stands tall and proud to hold our prayers from the passing cloud. Your finger traces a line in the dirt. You understand the mother you read about, who whipped her child for pointing out that the phases of the moon followed a predictable pattern. She wasn't stupid, she was terrified. She was enforcing a system designed to keep her safe from the one thing the church feared more than any demon: a population that could solve its own problems. You lean back, the old wooden chair groaning under your weight, a sound that echoes in the profound silence. A nest of heretics, wiped from the memory of God and man. But the thing your shovel just found feels less like a devil's altar and more like a pipe. Terracotta, smooth and perfect. When the archaeologists arrive, they don't find evidence of depravity. They find the opposite. You are with them, kneeling in the dirt, scraping away the centuries with a delicate brush. The skeletons emerge from the earth not as cautionary tales, but as impossibilities. The bones are strong. The teeth show little sign of the rampant decay and malnutrition that plagued 99% of medieval Europe. New laser scans of Notre Dame's fire-scarred carvings, conducted in the quiet of its restoration, revealed something that changes everything. They found geometric ratios hidden in the stone patterns, ratios identical to those in Arabic texts on optics and engineering, knowledge the church had officially banned, condemned as heretical. It's the ultimate act of defiance, building a monument to the power that suffocates you, while using its walls as a secret blackboard for the very truths they tried to destroy. You look up again, but this time with new eyes. The monstrous faces of the gargoyles leer down from the heights. What secret, what tool, what piece of forgotten power is so vital that hundreds were willing to be branded for it, to burn for it, to become a living, breathing, dying manuscript to protect it? They buried knowledge that could have saved them, that could have saved us. So what truth was so terrifying they had to erase it from the page itself? The priests tell you the famines are God's judgment. They say the thin soil and the skeletal faces in your village are a punishment for sin, a divine test of your faith. But the secret you whisper to your children under the cold, white eye of a full moon is a different kind of prayer. It's a heresy spoken into the earth. You are kneeling. The wet, black soil of your hidden acre cools the skin of your knees through your thin wool trousers. Your two children huddle beside you, their breath making small ghosts in the night air. This is the medieval equivalent of finding a declassified CIA file on Operation Mockingbird, irrefutable, institutional proof of a conspiracy to manipulate public knowledge for the purpose of control. This wasn't a scattered witch hunt against village healers. It was a coordinated, top-down, century-spanning campaign to make humanity helpless, to make them need a savior, to make them pray for a rain that a forgotten Roman aqueduct could have provided. You look at the screen, at the high-resolution image of the Pope's command. For the first time, you understand. The shovel strikes something that doesn't belong here. You feel the jolt run up the handle, a clean, sharp thunk that isn't the dull crunch of rock or the soft give of roots. It's the sound of something made, something buried. In the hot sun of the French Pyrenees, another construction worker groans, but you are frozen. Beneath 6 feet of earth, something has waited since the year 1244. The official records, tucked away in a dusty church archive, call this place Ovilar. They say it was cleansed. They refuse to discuss the possibility of a secret language, of a conspiracy etched into the very houses of their oppressor. It's easier to believe in simple faith than in a rebellion so brilliant, so audacious, it has remained hidden in plain sight for centuries. But the men who built this were not simple. They were a secretive guild of artisans and engineers, men who understood numbers and forces in a way the clergy, who only understood Latin and scripture, never could. And now we have proof. Modernity has given us tools they never dreamed of. You run your fingers over the raised lines of your own tattoo, the permanent pledge. The Inquisitor is gone, but he will be back. He knows a piece of the map is still missing. The network is shattered, the whispers silenced. You are alone, a living secret in a world that wants you dead. The map leads to a place of safety, a hidden library of everything they tried to burn. But what else does it lead to? The tools get more sophisticated, but the motive never changes. Control the past, and you own the future. They decide what is true. They decide who lives and who dies. Your fingers ache. You pick up the small, sharp knife used for corrections. Slowly, deliberately, you slice the binding threads that hold the forbidden chapter. The sound is barely audible, a soft snick like a breaking bone. The pages are free. One small omission for man, one giant plague for mankind. They erased star charts and medicine. It's what they were terrified you would become if you were healthy, strong, and clean. What power does a person find when they are no longer consumed by the agony of their own skin? Practical medicine that works. Agricultural techniques that produce reliable surplus. Natural philosophies that seek to explain the tides or the stars without invoking the hand of God. You feel a wave of nausea. Every poultice that failed, every crop that withered, every mind that was told not to ask why. It wasn't just ignorance, it was an agenda. This is the document that proves the Dark Ages weren't an accident. They were an induced coma. Your eyes meet his for a second, and in them, you see the reflection of a terrible new knowledge. The enemy is no longer outside the walls. It's inside. It's in the air you breathe. And it was sent here on purpose. It's the same symbol you saw scratched into the dirt floor of the peasant's hovel, the one the old woman whispered was a charm against the true dark. But here, it isn't a crude sigil of folk magic. It's perfect, precise, woven into a larger, dizzying pattern that spirals up the column. 99% of art historians will tell you this is decorative art, a mason's mark. They will write entire books about the piety of the men who built this place. Men who dedicated their lives to glorifying God. These people weren't devil worshippers. They were the librarians, the doctors, the engineers, the astronomers of a resistance movement, preserving knowledge the church wanted erased. They knew how to set a broken bone without prayer. They knew which herbs could stop a fever and which could end a pregnancy. They knew the earth was a sphere that spun around the sun. This is the heresy they died for. Not black magic, but science and memory. And the map on their skin, the map that is now incomplete, led to secret caches. Chemical formulas for compounds the church deemed sorcery. They weren't just saving souls, they were imprisoning minds. The metallic taste of fear is sharp in your mouth. You look at the words of Galen, a dead man's wisdom that could save millions. And you understand. This is the same chilling institutional strategy that will echo for 1,000 years. It's the quiet decision to scrub inconvenient climate data from a government server. It's the black marker that redacts a damning paragraph in a secret report, sealed under the guise of national security. The air grows colder. You can smell the stale incense clinging to his vestments, a scent meant to cover the odor of God's devout, unwashed flock. But you know, with a certainty that freezes the blood in your veins, that he can smell the lavender on you. It is the scent of the old world, the world of the forest, of women's knowledge, of heresy. He stops. His shadow falls over you. He doesn't look at your face. He looks down at your hands, clenched in your lap. The question isn't why they wanted you to be sick. The letter doesn't speak of heresy, devils, or crusades. It uses a bureaucratic phrase, a term of chilling corporate efficiency that has no place in a holy letter. As your mind translates the two words, the blood drains from your face. Systematicam obscurationem. Systematic obscuration. The metallic taste of adrenaline floods your mouth. This isn't a spiritual command. It's a policy memo. It outlines in calm, procedural language a formal strategy to actively suppress and erase specific kinds of knowledge, anything that diminishes mankind's reliance upon Holy Mother Church for succor. The list of targets is terrifyingly specific. It has intention. What they don't want you to know is that the plague wasn't just a random tragedy. For the men outside your walls, it was a tool. And it was just used with terrifying precision on you. Down in the square, a few brave souls, their faces wrapped in cloth, are dragging the first body toward a cart. But it's too late. The invisible seeds of that death are already taking root in the dust, in the air, on the hands of the living. A man near you coughs, a dry, rasping sound. The air is thick with the phantom smell of 1,000 years of incense and the damp, clean scent of cold rock. You run your fingers over the base of a massive pillar, the stone so frigid it feels like it's stealing the warmth from your blood. Your fingernail makes a soft scratching sound as it catches on the edge of a carving. It's a strange geometric symbol, a complex knot of lines and arcs, and you know it. Your heart hammers against your ribs. When you take these drawings from the trial records, these desperate sketches of a heresy they never understood, and you overlay them one by one, they form a map of this entire region, drawn in the ink of pain and the blood of the wise. You are a piece of that map. The miller was a piece. His wife was a piece. The two of them, taken together, marked a hidden ford across the river Whisper. Your own mark points to the old Roman ruins in the deep wood. Alone, they are meaningless. Together, they are a guide. They call this place a fortress of faith. But you know the truth. It's a fortress of information. This isn't about piety. It's about power. It's a systematic campaign to edit reality, to decide what humanity is allowed to remember. Just last year, you saw them take the great book, the one they call Kells, and scrape at its pages. Modern scholars, with their spectral analysis, have now found what lies beneath the prayers. Not just corrections, but entire worlds erased. Complex astronomical charts that showed the Earth was not the center of everything. It's the same logic that echoes today when simple, affordable paths to wellness are often mocked or buried by expensive, institutionally approved systems. Control the definition of health, and you control the people. The priest's sermon ends. The congregation shuffles, a wave of groans and coughing. He steps down from the pulpit, his black robes sweeping the filthy rushes on the floor. He begins to walk through the aisle, his gaze still scanning, searching. For what? A flicker of dissent? A soul not properly steeped in misery? You shrink into yourself, trying to become invisible. He draws closer. The air smells of dry paper, beeswax, and something else. The weight of secrets. You're not supposed to be here. Digitizing this particular collection of 12th century papal correspondence. Your superior called it low-priority administrative clutter. But your curiosity, a dangerous thing in these halls, got the better of you. The scanner hums, its green light a profane slash across the sacred page. One letter catches your eye. It's from Pope Lucius III, an internal directive to his bishops. It feels different, colder. Your Latin is good, but you slow down, your breath misting in the chilled air. They called it a myth because the alternative is too monstrous to contemplate. The truth is, 97% of medieval facts are deliberate fabrications, and this one was buried the deepest. They weren't just trying to break your city's defenses. They were trying to turn your home into a charnel house. This is proto-biological warfare. You are witnessing the moment the plague was not just spread, but aimed. It connects to the darkest whispers of our own time. Engineered viruses, pandemics deployed to destabilize nations and achieve geopolitical goals. It's a horror worse than disease because it has a human face. The cathedrals were not built for God. They were built to hide a secret from him. You stand in the heart of the beast, a stone forest reaching for a heaven you're no longer sure you trust. Your breath mists in the cold, a fleeting ghost against the eternal stone. Above you, soaring vaults climb into the darkness, a masterpiece of physics and faith, designed to make you feel small, to draw your eyes upward and away from the truth hidden at your feet. Everyone else looks up. You look down. They hunt the organized, the intelligent, the ones who remember a different way. Forensic historians, centuries from now, will analyze the meticulous records from the Bamberg witch trials and notice a strange, recurring detail. They'll see the Inquisitor's own words describing these devil's marks with unnerving precision. A triangle with 3 dots on the sole of a foot. A spiral inside a square hidden behind an ear. A pattern of intersecting lines on a woman's thigh. The clerks recorded them as proof of demonic pacts, never once realizing they were documenting the components of a single sprawling document. You can see the words on the page in front of you. A ghost text you are forbidden to transcribe. A single lost chapter, multiplied by every monk in every scriptorium across Christendom, is enough to condemn a continent. You are not preserving the past. You are digging a grave for the future, and the tool in your hand feels heavier than a shovel. 99% of people will never know that the plague wasn't just a disease of the body, but a sickness born from a single, curated lie. A lie you are helping to tell. In the excavated ruins of villages that were burned to the ground for heresy, archaeologists in the 20th century found them. Sophisticated soap-making vats, dating back to the 11th century. This wasn't just a few women secretly washing their hands. This was a network, a forbidden craft, a quiet, desperate war fought not with swords, but with cleanliness. It was a rejection of the foundational lie that your only path to heaven was to suffer through hell on earth. So the final, haunting question that should follow you into the dark is this: what else are they lying about now? The truth that defined 1,000 years of suffering wasn't found in a forgotten tomb or whispered on a deathbed. It was waiting on a piece of brittle vellum, in a script so precise it felt like a scream held back for 8 centuries. For most people, the Dark Ages are a settled fact, an unfortunate but natural collapse. 99% of what you've been taught is a carefully constructed lie. The year is 2003. You are a junior archivist, deep in the cold, silent heart of the Vatican. It's a smell you've only heard whispers of from the east, a smell of rotting flowers and spoiled meat, the signature of the Great Pestilence. It's the scent of black, swollen buboes, of organs liquefying, of a death so foul it corrupts the very air. Your stomach turns, and the metallic taste of pure terror floods your mouth. This is the secret, buried under 6 centuries of history. The deadliest pandemic in human history was given a helping hand. Military correspondence, long dismissed by historians as a tall tale, describes exactly this moment. It was a stunningly successful business venture, and its profits were measured in stolen lives. The ships begin to pull away from the dock, a fleet of floating tombs. But as they disappear into the haze, you are left with a single, horrifying question. What happened to the 3% they couldn't guarantee? You feigned ignorance, your heart a frantic drum against your ribs, the secret on your skin burning like a fresh brand. They called it a witch hunt, and 99% of people, now and centuries from now, will believe that's all it was, a frenzy of superstition. They don't see the truth you are living, the systematic, ruthlessly efficient extermination of a secret society. It's a pattern that will repeat itself through all of human history. A government that needs to silence dissent doesn't argue with it, it relabels it. They call activists terrorists. They call librarians and healers witches. The abbot's words echo in the hollow space of your skull, his voice as smooth and cold as a river stone. The chapter De Tuenda Sanitate, on the preservation of health. It is incomplete. The vellum is flawed. You will begin your copy on the following chapter. The pages on preventative hygiene are to be set aside for the fire. Set aside for the fire. One small omission: the knowledge of washing hands, of clean water, of separating the sick from the healthy. In the dead of night, you perform a different kind of prayer. The rhythmic scrape of a wooden paddle against the inside of a stone vat, a sound you must muffle with sacking. The soft, dangerous hiss as the lye water meets the rendered animal fat. This is not just cleaning. This is an act of rebellion. It is a declaration that your life, this one, right now, has value. This is the knowledge that has historians whispering. 99% of people will live and die inside this invisible architecture, believing the history they were taught, a history of kings and queens designed to distract you from the silent networks that truly ran the world then and run it now. They built their power on a foundation of buried truths and silenced voices. The medieval peasant, hiding a forbidden text by the last light of a guttering candle, has become you, scrolling past a censored post in the dead of night, feeling a ghost of an unease you can't quite name. They lied about the past, and you realize, with the cold metallic taste of fear in your mouth, that they know you have it. A silent, screaming arc against a bruised sky. You follow the horrifying trajectory of the corpse as it tumbles end over end, a rag doll thrown by a titan. It sails over the stone battlements, over your head, and lands with a wet, sickening thud in the market square below. You don't need to see it to know. The sound is unmistakable. The sound of flesh and bone hitting cobblestone. Another follows, and another. This isn't a desperate tactic. This is a message. The sweet, sick smell begins to drift up from the square. The church, in its deafening silence, was not a patron. It was a silent partner. This is the secret that history tries to forget. It's the same quiet complicity you see today. When a powerful institution turns a blind eye to the predators thriving under its banner, sacrificing the innocent to protect its pristine image. They hid one of the largest human trafficking schemes in history behind a mask of piety. The soft, rhythmic scrape of rope against wood becomes an unbearable sound, like a slow saw cutting through bone. The Children's Crusade wasn't a tragic failure of faith, a coded symbol, a geometric knot of lines and dots that to the ignorant eye might look like a spider or a strange star. But it marked you, not as a devil worshiper, but as a link in a chain, an underground railroad of forbidden knowledge. The Inquisitor's questions still echo in your mind. He looked at you with eyes like chips of flint, asking about strange gatherings, about books passed in secret, about the marks found on the bodies of the miller and his wife. The rhythmic scratch, scratch of a dozen other quills on vellum is the only sound. A dry whisper against the backdrop of a hacking cough from a dying man a wall away. This is the sound of history being written and unwritten. Your hand trembles, spattering a tiny black tear of ink onto the margin. You freeze, your heart hammering against your ribs. A mistake, but it is not the mistake that terrifies you. It is the instruction. The knowledge of the Romans, of aqueducts, of public baths, of the simple, miraculous chemistry of soap, was demonized, branded as the decadent rot of a pagan empire that fell for its own vanity. What they will never teach you is that this was an act of control. A population weakened by preventable disease, consumed by the daily misery of rashes and fevers and infections, does not have the strength to question. They do not have the energy to rebel. They only have the capacity to pray for an end to the suffering that the institution defines for them. Latin chants are now algorithm-fed headlines, flattening the world into simple, fear-based narratives. Look at how a dissenting voice, one that threatens a corporate or political interest, is not debated, but deleted, its proponent deplatformed, their name carved with the modern word for heretic, conspiracy theorist. They sell you the cure to a loneliness created by the very technology they sell. The tools have changed, from manuscripts to microchips, but the architecture of control is identical. Control the information, you control the reality. This single page in your hand is a direct contradiction to the world you know. A world built on the bedrock of suffering now for a reward later. The simple drawing of a water filter shatters that foundation completely. This knowledge wasn't just suppressed, it was annihilated, erased from memory. But a memory can't be killed if a fragment of it survives. The diagram in your hand is more than a memory of what was lost. It's a seed of what could be again. But now, as the distant monastery bell tolls the hour, you hear footsteps outside the chamber door. It's a waiting silence. You stand on the ramparts, your stomach a knot of fear. and watch as their great trebuchets, the siege engines they call the Whisper of God, are loaded. But they aren't loading them with boulders or barrels of burning pitch. Through the shimmering heat, you see them haul something else, something limp, something human. Your breath catches. It's a body. They are loading their own dead into the catapults. A confused murmur ripples through the defenders beside you. A desecration? A bizarre ritual? Then the arm of the trebuchet swings. It is a bill of lading from a Marseille shipping magnate. You trace the faded ink with a finger that trembles. It doesn't list pilgrims. It doesn't list souls. It lists in cold, spidery script, cargo units. Next to the numbers are destinations, not Jerusalem, but the bustling, sun-scorched slave markets of Tunis and Alexandria. And then, the most chilling detail of all, a corporate promise scrawled in the margins, a 97% delivery guarantee. They weren't praying for safe passage. They were ensuring a shipment of human beings. "This will hurt," she had whispered, her breath fogging in the chill. "But forgetting will hurt more." You nodded, jaw clenched, as she began to prick the design into the soft skin of your inner arm. The scrape of the bone against your flesh was a dry, scratching sound, a mouse in the walls, each pinpoint of pain a letter and a language no one else could read. It wasn't a blemish. It was a tattoo. Your task is impossible. A wave of nausea rolls over you. It's not just the fear, it's the smell. A constant, cloying miasma drifts from the infirmary next door, the sweet, sick scent of rotting flesh and herbal poultices that do nothing. The abbot burns incense, thick clouds of frankincense that sting your eyes and coat your tongue. But it's a futile gesture. It doesn't mask the smell of death. It only seasons it. And pride is the gateway through which all other demons enter. 99% of the people crammed into this stone hall believe this as they believe in the sun. They clutch their rosaries with dirt-caked fingers and pray for deliverance from the suffering they are told to embrace. They have forgotten what their ancestors knew. They have been made to forget, because the real secret, the one buried under a mountain of sanctified filth, is that this doctrine of decay was not an accident. It was a design. Basic hygiene wasn't lost. It was deliberately murdered. They built a cathedral of divine will and demonic threat. Its soaring arches designed to hide a very human conspiracy of power. The knowledge you whispered in secret, the forbidden wisdom of the Anima Codex, a path to self-reliance, to health, to empowerment, had to be erased. Not because it was wrong, but because it worked. Does the air in this room feel familiar? The most terrifying secret is not that this happened. It's that you are still living inside their cathedral. The cold stone has become the cool glass of your screen. That sweet, acrid perfume of burning parchment, the smell of 1,000 libraries being torched in town squares across Europe. It's the scent of a civilization turning to ash. The authorities, the powers that be, they didn't fear a demon escaping the ink. They feared the idea blooming in your mind, the same idea that is taking root right now in the cold, silent dark of this monastery. The idea that humanity, with its own two hands and its own brilliant mind, could build its own heaven right here on this earth. The official story of the Black Death is a comforting lie. 99% of what you've been told is designed to conceal a truth more terrifying than any disease. It wasn't just an accident of nature. It was a weapon. You are behind the walls of Kaffa, a Genoese trading post on the Black Sea in the year 1346. The air is thin and tastes of dust and starvation. For months, the Mongol horde has surrounded you, their silent siege a constant, grinding pressure that has worn your hope down to the bone. But today, the silence is different. You left your village with a wooden cross and a promise of miracles. Now your bare feet stick to the tar-caulked planks of a ship that smells not of God, but of bilge water and human despair. The man pushing you forward doesn't look like a holy guide. He looks like a butcher, his hands calloused from handling ropes and coin. This is not a crusade. It's a harvest. The forbidden truth is hidden away in a private collection, a document that survived when the children did not. It is not a holy scroll. You feel the familiar tingle under your arm, a phantom echo of the needle and the pledge. You remember the night, not in a clearing under a full moon, but in the cold, damp cellar of the weaver's cottage, the air thick with the smell of wet earth and dying embers. There were no chants, no dark lords, only the low, steady voice of Alara, the midwife, her face carved by flickering candlelight. She held a sharpened bird bone in one hand and a small clay pot of ink in the other, a black paste of soot, gallnuts, and yarrow. The work of God, they told you, was done with a quill and ink. They never mentioned the real work was done with a pumice stone and a blade. You are Brother Thomas. The cold of the scriptorium floor seeps through the soles of your worn leather shoes, but damp chill that never leaves the stone. It's a cold that feels ancient, permanent. Your knuckles are white as you grip the quill. Before you, bathed in the trembling gold of a single tallow candle, lies the work of Galen, the master physician of a forgotten empire. Your task is simple. It's in the way your skin isn't gray with grime, the way your fingernails hold no trace of the earth. You are a candle lit in a crypt, and it makes you a target. The church has taught you that this life is a trial. Sickness is a holy flagellation, a gift from God to purify your soul for the paradise to come. Filth is humility. The sores that fester on your neighbor's arm are stigmata of the meek. To wash, to preen, to care for the wretched vessel of your body, that is vanity. That is pride. So, it was never an accident. The centuries of darkness were not a decline. They were a design, an induced coma administered by the twin hands of power, the nobility and the church. They orchestrated a grand theater of control, and they needed you, the audience, to be sick, scared, and utterly dependent. They whispered of heresy to discredit the scientist charting the stars. They screamed of witchcraft to drag the village healer to the pyre. They promised you a golden eternity in heaven to justify a brutal, short life on earth. It was the blueprint for the healthy village of Avilar, a place that has become a legend, a myth of a town where the plague somehow passed them by. It wasn't a miracle, it was knowledge. The Codex taught people how to save themselves, and in doing so, it committed the ultimate sin. It made the church's promise of heavenly salvation less valuable. Why wait for paradise in the next life when you could stop your child from dying in this one? Close your eyes, breathe in. You can almost smell it. You realize with a sickening lurch that this was never just about your secret love. It was a warning. The church doesn't just tax the sin it permits, It seeks to root out and destroy any secret that it cannot control, cannot monetize. Your small paid-for rebellion is tolerated, but the forbidden knowledge of a village woman, her ability to give others a power that circumvents the church entirely, that is a sin that cannot be paid for with silver. That is a secret they will only accept being paid for in blood. 99% of people will believe this beautiful, poisonous fairy tale for the next 800 years. But you see the truth. There are no hymns. There is only the low, animal sound of weeping, a sound that gets lost in the creak of the massive wooden hulls and the snap of canvas in the wind. You see thousands of children, not marching, but being herded up splintered gangplanks. Their faces are pale with hunger and confusion, their eyes wide with a terror they don't yet have a name for. Imagine you are 12 years old. They told you the devil's mark was a spot on a witch's body where Satan had branded her, a numb patch of flesh where a demon's claw had seared the soul. This is a lie, a story whispered by men in black robes to hide a terrifying secret. 3 people in your village of Oakhaven knew the truth. 2 of them are now dead, their passing dismissed as a tragic accident just days after the Inquisitor's carriage rattled away down the muddy track. You are the 3rd. It's the proof they couldn't burn, preserved in the cold, dark earth. Each herb is a word in a language of healing the authorities tried to make the world forget. And as scientists identify the last of the plants clutched in her skeletal hand, a cold dread settles in. They recognize it. It was a powerful treatment for a strange, creeping sickness of the blood, a disease the church preached was an incurable curse from God, a punishment for the sin of wanting to live too much. It is the smell of a secret, and in this world, secrets are a currency paid for in blood. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue as the priest's voice drones on, a litany of suffering and sin. His eyes, small and dark, sweep across his flock, and you feel his gaze like a physical touch, a cold finger tracing the line of your jaw. He cannot know, he cannot, but your cleanliness feels like a beacon in the holy gloom. It was the knowledge that a life free from constant, debilitating sickness was not a miracle to be begged for, but a right that could be engineered with charcoal, sand, and clay. The greatest secret of the Middle Ages was a glass of clean water. It was a manual for earthly salvation, and 99% of the world will never even know it existed. The Anima Codex wasn't a single book. You see that now. It was the collected wisdom of 1,000 forgotten minds. The agricultural secrets to turn fallow fields green. The herbal remedies that could soothe a fever the priests call a demonic possession. The engineering principles that could raise a bridge or keep a roof from collapsing under the snow. Brother Thomas gets up to leave, his robes whispering against the stone floor. He pauses at the door. "There are whispers," he says, not turning around, "about the midwife in the village, the one they say uses herbs to prevent heirs." He lets the words hang in the air, cold and sharp. "The bishop does not approve of such unnatural things. It is God's will that new souls be brought into the world, to be baptized, for a fee, of course." He leaves you in the silence. The scent of his leather purse lingers. 2 priests knew the truth about the children. For their troubles, they were found floating face down in the harbor of Marseilles, their lungs filled with the same salt water that would carry a generation away forever. You stand on the docks, and the air is thick with lies. It tastes of salt, tar, and something else, the metallic tang of betrayal. The story they tell you, the one they will write in their holy books, is of pious children singing hymns. Their faith so pure it could part the seas and reclaim the Holy Land. They have no idea what I've learned about his heart and authority. In the Middle Ages is everything. This is the medieval blueprint for Big Pharma burying a cheaper, natural cure. They didn't fear a pact with the devil. They feared a populace that no longer needed to beg them for salvation. Centuries later, in a quiet field in Poland, archaeologists scrape away the dirt from a 12th century grave. Inside, they don't just find a skeleton. They find a ghost who is finally ready to speak. Around the bones of a woman, they unearth the remains of over 30 distinct medicinal herbs. A buried pharmacy. A silenced voice. What they don't want you to know is that the stench of medieval life was a weapon, and the deadliest sin wasn't murder. It was the smell of soap. You stand in the suffocating press of the church, 100 unwashed bodies creating a fog of sweat, sickness, and stale breath. It's the scent of piety. It's the smell of devotion. But on your hands, hidden in the folds of your coarse woolen tunic, is a different scent entirely. It's the ghost of lavender and the sharp, clean bite of lie. They didn't just hoard gold. They hoarded wellness. This is the secret that historians have hidden for centuries, not because they couldn't see it, but because the implication is too monstrous to accept. The gatekeepers of heaven were the architects of a living hell. The greatest conspiracy in human history wasn't about a holy relic, a secret bloodline, or a hidden treasure. It was about preventing you, the peasant, the serf, the commoner, from knowing how to filter your own water. They called the collection the Anima Codex, a name spoken in hushed tones, a story told to children to ensure they never went looking for it. A book of pure black magic, they said, a heresy bound in human skin. The truth, you now realize, is infinitely more threatening. The ink on the vellum isn't a summoning circle. It's a detailed diagram for a simple, brutally effective filter using layers of sand and charcoal. A device that could stop the bloody flux that takes half the village's children each summer. This wasn't a manual for damning your soul. It ensured that every acre, every coin, every ounce of power flowed upwards, always upwards, to the bishops, and then to Rome. Nothing could be allowed to leak out of the system. This is a truth that echoes into our own time. It's the same engine of power that manufactures a moral panic to distract from a financial crime, that screams about sin to cover the sound of the counting house. They create a public enemy out of a private desire, all to protect the institution's bottom line. The playbook hasn't changed in 700 years, and you are beginning to understand that the men reaping the rewards were not simple lords or merchants. They were something else. His breathing, once ragged and shallow, becomes deep and even. It is over. He will live. Elric wipes his hands on a rag, but his eyes aren't triumphant. They are full of a different kind of fear. The fear of the knowledgeable man in a world that praises ignorance. He looks at you, his gaze sharp enough to cut. "They think this is my only secret," he whispers, his voice low and raspy. He gestures to a heavy, iron-strapped chest in the corner, a chest you've never seen him open. "They fear what I can do to a man's head." You are there as the priest, his face a mask of pious fury, confiscates her life's work, a hand-drawn herbal book. You hear the crisp, dry whisper of the pages as he throws them into the fire, the sound of 1,000 years of wisdom turning to smoke. Church records, sealed for 800 years, now reveal this was official policy: destroy local medicine. Why? Because when your child's wound festers and the priest's prayers fail, that old woman's poultice of moldy bread, a raw, natural penicillin, can stop the rot. Her cure makes a mockery of his authority. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. You'll soon see this symbol for what it really is: a message from the dead about a truth they were killed to protect. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Each pyre was not an execution. It was the destruction of a blueprint, the silencing of a scientist. You feel a profound, bottomless anger. This wasn't ignorance. This was policy. A population perpetually weakened by disease is a population that cannot rebel. A people who believe sickness is a punishment from God will never question the authority of those who claim to speak for him. The entire power structure, the castles, the cathedrals, the crowns, it was all built on a foundation of managed sickness. They held the cure, and they let their people drink the poison. The most dangerous book in the world contained no incantations. In your hands, you hold the only known fragment, and it isn't a spell to summon a demon. It's a blueprint for clean water. Your fingernails are raw from prying the loose stone from the deep wall of the Spanish monastery, the damp chill of the cavity still clinging to your skin. The parchment is impossibly thin, crackling with the dry whisper of centuries as you hold it to the trembling light of your tallow lamp. While you preach from the pulpit about the fires of hell awaiting the lustful, the church has turned the deepest of human instincts into a taxable and therefore controllable commodity. Why? The secret isn't about morality, it's about money. A married priest, a legitimate wife, would produce legitimate heirs. Sons who would have a claim on the parish lands, the tithe barn, the mill by the river. A son could inherit. A concubine's child is a bastard, with no legal right to anything. Celibacy was never just a spiritual discipline. It was the world's most effective tool for wealth consolidation. And the way it ended. The reeve unrolls the parchment, and you see the names at the bottom, the witnesses to the transfer of your life. And something catches your eye. Beside one of the names is a small inked symbol, a coiled serpent eating its own tail. It is a mark you have seen somewhere before, in a place of deep shadow and cold stone, a place you were told never to speak of. The famine was no act of God, it was a harvest. The system protects itself. The modern priests of profit and procedure bury the truth not because it's false, but because it's dangerously simple. The secret of successful medieval surgery was suppressed for the exact same reason. It threatened the establishment's control over the ultimate commodity, life and death. The grating sound stops. Elric carefully lifts a small disc of bone from the man's skull. A dark, thick fluid wells up, and the merchant on the table lets out a long, shuddering sigh. His thrashing ceases. The frantic tension drains from his body. You see her in your mind, her hands, wrinkled and stained with plant juice, gently crushing willow bark. She's not muttering incantations to a demon, she's making aspirin. The church says your fever is a test of faith. She knows it's a fire that can be cooled. For this knowledge, she will burn. 99% of historians will call her a footnote, a victim of superstition. They refuse to discuss the terrifying truth, the sheer, undeniable efficacy of the remedies they tried to bury. They didn't just hide the truth about the practical, life-saving knowledge possessed by common people. They built cathedrals on top of it, burning the teachers as heretics and the books as fuel. This wasn't a dark age of accidental ignorance. It was a controlled demolition of human ingenuity. This symbol is a breadcrumb. Following it leads to a conspiracy so vast, it reframes our entire understanding of the past and our present. The methods used to control information then, manufacturing fear, demonizing knowledge, creating an official story, are the same ones used to control you now. You suddenly hear the faint, almost inaudible hum of your own blood rushing in your ears as the world tilts on its axis. Every piece of your journey reassembles itself in this new, horrifying light. The gargoyles staring down from the cathedral roof, their agonized faces were not warnings against sin. They were a gallery of the dying, a stone-carved cry for a clean drink. The witches burned at the stake, the ones with the symbol tattooed on their skin. They weren't consorts of the devil. They were librarians, engineers, healers, trying to pass on the knowledge. What other blueprints for a better world are still buried, waiting for a shovel to strike the truth? He means your failure to pay on time will have consequences far beyond your own soul. The sin isn't the act. The sin is not giving the church its cut. You push the coins across the table. They scrape against the wood. An ASMR quality sound of submission. A grainy, final sound that settles the debt for another moon. He sweeps them into his own purse without counting. He doesn't need to. The amount is understood. What they don't want you to know, what has been buried in diocesan records from 14th century Germany for centuries, is this systematized extortion. Your small strip of land, the one your father and his father worked, is no longer yours. You cannot pay the tax. You cannot provide the share of the crop because there is no crop. You will sign it away for a single bag of oats, oats that were likely grown on your own land last season. It's the same cold calculus we see today, when a global crisis hits and billionaires get richer while families lose their homes. They call it disaster capitalism now. In 1316, it had no name. It was just the way the world worked. He offers the chance to not die at all. He can mend the body the priests have already surrendered to God. And a man who can defy a death sentence written by God himself holds a power that makes a king tremble and a bishop rage. This isn't just history. It's a pattern, a ghost that haunts our own world. Think of the pioneering doctor today who discovers a simple, inexpensive cure for a disease that a multi-billion-dollar industry is built on treating. They aren't celebrated, they are discredited. Their work is called fraudulent. Their character is assassinated. The most dangerous person in your village isn't the Lord with his sword or the priest with his God. It's the old woman at the edge of the woods, the one with dirt permanently under her fingernails. They call her a witch, but what they don't want you to know is that her real crime, the one punishable by fire, isn't heresy. It's that she's a better doctor than any man in a stone cathedral. You feel the phantom heat of the pyre on your face, a heat that has consumed thousands just like her. Your skin crawls as your eyes adjust, drawn to a shape on the low roof beam above you. It's a crudely carved symbol, a circle with 3 wavy lines etched inside. Historians dismiss it as a meaningless folk charm, a peasant's superstition against the evil eye. But what if it isn't? What if it's a key, a fragment of a lost language of survival, a secret that, if understood, could unravel the entire official narrative? A blueprint for a simple charcoal and sand water purifier, described in the forbidden pages of the Anima Codex. A technology so basic, it could have been built in any village with a bucket and a fire pit. Yet so powerful, it could have stopped the relentless march of cholera, dysentery, the bloody flux. It could have saved more lives than all the prayers ever uttered. A shudder racks your body, a deep, primal cold that has nothing to do with the temperature of the room. It's the ice of realization. You don't just discredit the study, you destroy the lab, salt the earth, and erase the scientists who ran it. A Villar's secret is that they had cracked the code. They had built a small, functioning paradise, and the powers that be couldn't let the world see it was possible. They were not killed for being wrong. They were exterminated for being right. And as you look out over the excavated foundations, you realize you're standing on the gravestone of a future that was murdered in its cradle. You can hear her humming in the small rectory next door. The gentle, domestic sound, a stark contrast to this cold, silent transaction. That sound, the warmth of her presence, the mended tear in your winter cloak she stitched last night, that is what this silver buys. Not forgiveness, permission. Brother Thomas finally raises his eyes. They are flat, like river stones. The bishop is concerned about the souls in this parish, Father Johann, he says, his voice smooth. He prays that temptation does not lead your flock astray. It's a threat wrapped in a blessing. He means your temptation. They weren't just profiting from your misery. They were enforcing it, leveraging it. The ledgers show it all. A ghost map of calculated starvation, where food flowed not to the needy, but to the highest bidder. This is a secret they buried in accounting books. A story of brutal economic warfare, recast as a simple, unavoidable tragedy. You see the Lord's Reeve coming. He doesn't look hungry. He walks through the mud with a purpose, a scroll in his hand. He is here to foreclose. Why was this knowledge so dangerous it had to be driven into cellars like this one? Because power in your world is built on a simple transaction. The baron offers protection for loyalty. The merchant offers goods for coin. And the priest offers the promise of an afterlife for obedience in this one. His power is absolute because he holds the monopoly on what happens after you die. But a man like Elric, with his forbidden scalpels and his steady, wine-soaked hands, he offers something far more immediate, far more threatening. You press the final seed into the earth and smooth the soil over it like a blanket. You've given your children a weapon, more powerful than any sword, a way to live. But as you lead them back toward the dark silhouette of your hut, a cold thought wraps around your heart. This knowledge, passed down in whispers from a forgotten time, keeps your family from the brink of death. But if they were willing to bury a truth that could save millions from starvation, what other secrets are they letting people die to protect? The air inside this hovel is a thick cocktail of damp soil, sharp wood smoke, and something else. A faint, metallic tang that coats the back of your throat. It's the smell of fear. A single tallow candle sputters, casting long, dancing shadows that make the cramped space feel alive and menacing. The wet sound of rotting thatch drips rhythmically in a dark corner, a constant reminder of the world trying to reclaim this small pocket of warmth. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. You can almost feel the grit in your teeth, the metallic tang of blood and mud and sickness that define the taste of life for millions. It is dirty water. And then, the final secret, the hidden fourth line, the one they always tried to disguise, to erase, to omit, the line flowing out. It was there all along, carved as a crack in the stone, inked as a flourish on a page, tattooed as a scar hidden beneath another. It represents clean water. It is not a symbol. It is a schematic. It proved that life didn't have to be short, brutish, and miserable. It proved that you didn't need a distant lord or a corrupt priest to live a good life. You needed clean water, smart farming, and knowledge of the earth. Their success was the most dangerous heresy of all. You feel your blood run cold as the real reason for their extermination becomes clear. This wasn't a punishment. It was the deliberate, systematic destruction of a successful prototype. It's the same chilling logic a modern corporation uses to bury a study that 99% of your flock, the men and women who confess their most shameful thoughts to you through a wooden screen, believe your vow of celibacy is an iron bond between you and God. They have no idea it's a business model. They see the holy man. Thomas sees a debtor. Your hand trembles slightly as you untie the leather pouch at your belt. The metallic clink of the silver coins feels unnaturally loud in the silence. It's the sound of hypocrisy. While your child cries from a hunger you can no longer soothe, ships heavy with life-giving wheat sail from ports in Genoa and Venice. They are not sailing to save you. They are sailing away from you. The lords and the wealthy merchants, the men who smell of warm bread and spiced wine, they saw the coming rain. They saw the failing crops not as a disaster, but as an opportunity. They bought grain for pennies from desperate farmers and then hoarded it, creating an artificial scarcity that sent prices soaring into the heavens. But what they don't want you to know is that deep in the graveyards of London, archaeologists will one day unearth the forgotten patients of a 13th century hospital. They will find skulls just like this one, marked with the same crude holes. And they will see the undeniable proof, smooth, rounded edges of healed bone, evidence of survival. The data will be shocking, a fact that shatters every assumption you've been taught. The survival rate for this demonic procedure was nearly 50%. Half the people lived. This is the secret they don't want you to know. A peasant who can feed his family without the Lord's blessing is a peasant who can think for himself. A man with a full belly might start asking questions. He might wonder if God truly wishes him to starve while the granaries of the abbey are overflowing. It's the same tactic of control you see today, where sustainable, independent life is choked by regulations that favor monolithic corporations. The secret wasn't in the seed. It was in who controlled the harvest. The greatest lie ever told about the Middle Ages isn't about dragons or wizards. It's the one that says your ancestors were ignorant, brutish, and lived short, miserable lives because they simply knew no better. This is the official story, the one carved into 1,000 years of sanitized history. But the truth, buried under layers of ash and fear is that they weren't ignorant, they were silenced. You are standing on a floor of packed earth, the chill of it seeping through the thin leather of your shoes.